People talk about power. They talk about forehands, serves, speed, athleticism, and tactics. But what they rarely talk about, at least not deeply, is the invisible part of tennis. The psychological atmosphere that surrounds a great player. The unspoken energy that changes the way opponents breathe, move, think, and feel before the first ball is even struck. With Roger Federer, this invisible energy was so strong, so consistent, so deeply felt that it became something players, fans, and commentators started calling the Federer aura. But what exactly is this aura? Why did opponents step onto the court already feeling smaller, tighter, or overwhelmed? Why did players who looked confident in warm-ups suddenly unravel in the first few games? Why did even champions admit that Federer made them feel something they couldn't explain? And how can a player intimidate the world without aggression, without trash talk, without anger, just by being who they are? Today, we explore that mystery, not as a Federer worship piece, but as an emotional and psychological investigation into why some people radiate a presence so powerful that others unconsciously shrink around them. The Federer aura begins long before the match. It starts in the mind of the opponent, quietly, invisibly. Through years of watching Federer make tennis look effortless. When someone plays with such fluidity, such elegance, such clarity, it creates a belief in others that they are operating on a different level. Not a higher level of effort, but a higher level of existence. Watching Federer play felt like witnessing something that was already perfect, something predetermined, something inevitable. Opponents didn't just fear losing, they feared disrupting beauty itself. That alone creates psychological intimidation. Because when someone seems untouchable, you begin to doubt whether you deserve to challenge them. Opponents did not fear Federer as a threat. They feared him as a standard. When players warmed up next to Federer, they could feel the contrast. Federer moved like water, smooth, effortless, unforced. There was no tension in his walk, no strain in his strokes, no visible attempt to impress. His presence radiated calmness, and calmness is one of the most intimidating psychological weapons in sports. When someone is calm in chaos, others begin to feel their own tension more intensely. Federer became a mirror that exposed the nervousness of his opponents simply by not showing any of his own. This is the heart of psychological intimidation without aggression. You don't need to dominate the opponent. You just need to make them aware of their own insecurity. Opponents walked onto the court feeling the weight of expectation, not Federer's expectation, but their own internal story about him. They feared being made to look foolish. They feared being sent side to side like mannequins. They feared becoming another highlight clip on YouTube. But beneath those fears was something even deeper, the fear of not being enough. Federer didn't intimidate with his presence. He intimidated with what his presence awakened inside you. And this is where psychology becomes truly interesting. When a player believes, deep inside, that they are less likely to win, their body follows that belief. The feet hesitate, the muscles tighten, the mind becomes rushed. Shots that normally feel natural suddenly feel loaded with meaning. Opponents tell themselves, I have to play my very best to have a chance. And that mindset is the beginning of collapse. Because when you think you must play perfectly, perfection becomes impossible. Federer's aura made opponents chase perfection. And chasing perfection is the quickest way to destroy your rhythm. Even top players admitted that against Federer, they felt pressure to play out of their comfort zone. They went for lines they wouldn't normally go for. They tried to out-beauty the most beautiful game on earth. And the moment you try to outperform someone in their natural strength, you lose yourself in the process. But why does Federer create this effect? Why him specifically? It isn't just his skill. Skills can be intimidating, but people can adapt to skill. It isn't just his results. Winning can intimidate, but players also study winners. It isn't even his reputation. Reputations fade with time, but Federer's aura stayed strong even at the end of his career. The real reason is emotional. Federer never showed desperation. And when a person doesn't need anything from you, not your mistakes, not your fear, not your approval, they become psychologically dominant without trying. Federer played from a place of abundance. His strokes looked unhurried. His energy looked limitless. His presence felt peaceful. He didn't fight the match. He danced with it. And when someone dances while you are trying to survive, your body feels the difference instantly. Your mind tells you that you are working too hard, that you are behind, that you are out of rhythm, that your game is too heavy, too forced, too noisy compared to his silence. Federer made opponents feel noisy inside, and noise is the enemy of performance. Another piece of the Federer aura comes from something purely human. People projected their own ideals onto him. Federer represented mastery, elegance, intelligence, discipline, beauty, effortlessness, qualities people admire and even worship. When someone represents an ideal, facing them becomes not just a physical challenge, but an emotional one. You are not just playing a match. You are confronting a symbol of something you wish you were. Players weren't losing to Federer. They were losing to what Federer represented in their minds. This is true in life too. Some people have an aura that makes us self-conscious. They trigger comparison. They trigger doubt. They show us qualities we wish we had. And instead of expanding into our potential, we shrink into our insecurity. The Federer aura is not just a tennis phenomenon. It's a psychological phenomenon seen in every field, every profession, every social group. But here's the twist. Federer never asked for this aura. He never tried to intimidate. His calmness was simply who he was. His elegance was natural. His presence was quiet. And that quietness created an emotional vacuum where opponents projected their fears. The intimidation came not from Federer's personality, but from the opponent's interpretation of it. And that is the most powerful form of intimidation, the one you create inside yourself. Opponents began losing before the match because they lost the mental battle with their own expectations. They were so focused on Federer's strengths that they abandoned their own. They were so invested in his calmness that they noticed their own nerves more. They were so aware of his story that they forgot the story they were supposed to write. The Federer aura wasn't a force pushing opponents down. It was a mirror reflecting themselves back at them. Now, here is your CTA. If this episode helped you see the invisible psychological layers of tennis more clearly, subscribe to the channel for weekly episodes that go deeper than technique and into the emotional heart of the sport. Share this episode with someone who admires Federer. They will understand him in a new way. And tell me in the comments, have you ever faced someone who made you feel smaller before the match even started? Someone whose presence felt heavier than their shots? Your answer might help someone else understand their own mental patterns on court. And here is your closing message. Greatness isn't always loud. Intimidation isn't always aggressive. And pressure doesn't always come from the outside. Sometimes the strongest auras are the quietest ones. The ones that remind us of our own insecurities simply by standing in front of us. Federer showed the world that power can be gentle, intimidation can be graceful, and dominance can be peaceful. And maybe the lesson is this. When you master yourself so completely that you no longer need to prove anything, the world bends around your presence. Not because you force it, but because you no longer fight with it.